Um, just an update. I mean, it's been a while since we've got to connect live in person. Our next live English session will be September 16th, and that's with either Nico or Devin. I can't remember who's doing next week. And the subject will be on forgiveness, which is going to parallel really well with what Dr. Rush is presenting us with today. All right, so I wanted to share there is a really important topic that we're exploring, kicking off our fall series of expert briefings. That's this Wednesday. It's titled Addressing the Challenge of Apathy and Parkinson's. So this week's expert briefing is going to address an often overlooked yet impactful symptom of Parkinson's disease, which is called apathy. Apathy can be profound, can affect the quality of life profoundly for those living with Parkinson's disease, making it harder to stay engaged in daily activities and also harder to manage symptoms effectively. Apathy can also be challenging not only for individuals with Parkinson's, but also their care partners and loved ones. This was one of the highest suggested and desired subject for the Parkinson's Foundation that we received from you all to address. So we decided to place it on our expert briefings platform in hopes that it reaches most of you who are interested in learning more about the impact of apathy. So that's this Wednesday. If you can't join us live, it will be recorded and posted next week. So just a little FYI. Wonderful. So that's it for my announcements today, and I will pass the baton to Dr. Taylor Rush. Dr. Rush, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Krista. It's wonderful to see everyone today. I know the weather has been a little bit cooler here in Cleveland too. We finally got a bit of reprieve from summer, and certainly looking forward to some of the fall weather that we usually have each year. So thank you all for joining. And today I thought I would revisit a topic that I've talked about before, but I think it's been a while. So I thought it might be time for a refresher. And honestly, it's one of my favorite topics when it comes to mindfulness and progressing with your practice. And that is the idea of paradox. And we're going to specifically talk a bit about paradox and its relation to how it can then make things difficult to accept. And we know with mindfulness, some of our practice is about how do we accept and acknowledge what's going on in the present moment. And as simple as sometimes that seems in description, in practice, it can often be a bit more difficult. So when we think about paradox, a general definition of that is a situation, a person, or a thing that combines contradictory features. And one of my favorite quotes from F. Scott Fitzgerald is that he says, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. So how do we hold two opposing ideas at the same time without it derailing us? And when I'm working with people on developing a mindfulness practice, we know that this is something that can be a challenge and that people grapple with. And I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge different parts of experiences, even if it feels like they conflict. So some examples of that might be, I may hear from someone, I can't be mindful when my tremor is distracting me. How am I supposed to be in this Zen-like meditation state when my tremor is acting up? Or someone might say, I can't enjoy this family gathering I'm supposed to go to because I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed by that prospect and that just makes me tired. How am I supposed to go and enjoy it if I'm feeling that way? Or sometimes when I'm working with people on the acceptance of their diagnosis, they'll maybe say, if I can't change the fact that I have Parkinson's, why bother? I might as well admit defeat. Or, sometimes as they're coming into my office for therapy, they may say, well, if I'm uncomfortable with this idea of going to therapy, how on earth could I benefit from it? So it's this idea that it's either or. We either feel one way or another. when in fact, I think we have to be open to experience one thing and another. So we may be uncomfortable and open to the experience that creates some discomfort for us. We might be stressed about situations in our lives or about symptoms our bodies may be experiencing, but can also be mindful of what's going on in the moment. Sometimes you may be sad about some things that are happening and happy about others. Sometimes you might feel stuck in a situation and not sure how it could possibly change, but also be able to remain optimistic that something can change. And that actually, as I think about that, and I often work through these kinds of topics with people, there's a great quote by Carl Rogers, who's a famous psychotherapist, who said that the curious paradox of life is that when I can accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And so when practicing mindfulness, we eventually sometimes come to realize that suffering comes from wanting things to be different than they actually are. And so there's an analogy that I'll sometimes use where, you may have a beach ball in front of you in the water, and what you really want is that beach ball to sink. It may be a beach ball of emotion you don't want to deal with. It might be a beach ball of stressful situations that are just difficult to think about. And you just want that beach ball to sink. So you push it down as far as you possibly can. But it takes effort and it takes energy and it takes force to push that beach ball down. And the more you push it down, oftentimes the more velocity with which it will come back up to the surface, because ultimately it will come to the surface. The situations that are in front of us, we eventually have to deal with. The emotions that we might tuck away eventually come out somehow. And so when we're able to accept that the beach ball is going to float, when we accept that these situations and these emotions that we experience exist, we can oftentimes be able to expend less energy on fruitless efforts towards trying to make them sink. So being mindful can help us to illuminate the situations that we're dealing with for what they are. And it may be understanding our suffering more, but it also means that mindfulness can be the antidote. Mindfulness is a way of attending to different facets of our experience and allows whatever arises to be here right now because it's already here. And so I think that being able to meet stressful situations or negative emotions with some compassion and curiosity often help us to better hold them in the same space. So again, we may feel stressed or frustrated or overwhelmed, but maybe we also feel some gratitude, some joy, and connectedness to others. So how can we hold both of those things at the same time without completely trying to push away one and attend to the other? Because sometimes we need to do both. And by being able to understand those different things that are going on in our experience and honoring them and acknowledging them for what they are, we can sometimes get a better understanding of our mind's narrative of a situation without necessarily getting bogged down in the dialogue. So I want to give us some time to work a little bit in an acceptance meditation that incorporates this idea of paradox. So go ahead and get in whatever comfy position feels best for you. That may be seated, it might be lying down, it might be reclined, whatever fits your body for today, because every day is different. Every meditation practice is different. So see what your body might need from you today, okay? And as you settle, you are certainly welcome to close your eyes. Or for some people, they prefer their eyes to remain open and maybe softly gazing towards a fixed point a few feet in front of you. There's no wrong way of doing this, okay? As you get into this position of peace and comfort, I want you to consider slowly bringing your attention to your breath. The breath is your anchor. The breath, for many, can be a way to get into the moment and out of the past or the future. The breath is always something that's happening in real time that we can connect to. Go ahead and just take notice of the sensation of your breath. Maybe noticing as the air hits your nostrils or the back of your throat. Or maybe as your lungs gently expand that nourishing oxygen. And noticing as the breath expels, as the lungs push the air out, up the throat, and through your nose or mouth, whatever's most comfortable. With curiosity, noticing the sensations of each breath and how they may be similar and how they may be unique. Not striving to make the breath any different than it is. We're just gently noticing what's already there. Bringing light to a constant process that our body is engaged in, but we may not always pay attention to. By attending to the breath, allowing other thoughts or to-do list items just kind of float by, clouds in the sky. Maybe even floating to the other side of a wall in your house, so it'll be there after we're done. And give yourself permission for a brief reprieve. As you continue to breathe, I want you to imagine that breath surrounding your heart. Feeling a sense of warmth, maybe even a sense of openness. We oftentimes harden and close our hearts because of so much that's going on in the world that's painful. It can help to open them every once in a while. Allowing things in, but also allowing things out. Each breath Feeling that warmth and openness even more. Now, I'm going to say a few phrases, and after I say them, I want you to silently say them to yourself. See how it feels to absorb each of these statements. I accept myself for all that I am. I accept that I am inherently flawed and uniquely made. I accept the mistakes I have made and can forgive myself. I accept the wisdom I have gained from making mistakes in my life. I accept that I cannot change the past nor predict the future. I accept that the here and now is the only place I can live and thrive. I accept that the world can be painful as well as a source of joy, wonder, and happiness. I accept that I have purpose in this world as the imperfect being that I am. As you reflect on these statements, notice warmth and openness of your heart. Has it changed? Do you notice it more? Or you may notice that it's more challenging. Acknowledging that living in paradox is not always comfortable. But vital to learning how to thrive in an imperfect world. Let's go ahead and take one intentional deep breath here through your nose or mouth, letting your lungs fill to capacity, holding that breath for just a count or two, slowly exhaling. Perhaps letting go of any tension or anticipation you've been holding on to. Allowing your body to be fully supported by whatever is holding you. Granting yourself a moment of peace. When you're ready, start bringing yourself back to a little more active awareness. Maybe moving the shoulders, the neck, or wiggling fingers and toes, shifting in your seat. Whatever helps to enliven your body just a little. If your eyes have been closed or unfocused, maybe bringing them back to more active awareness as well. Here to our Zoom space. Seeing some eyes. Just catching up on chat here. So would love to hear your thoughts today on how this practice went. We have some good comments already. So Babs had mentioned a paradox can be science and religion. Absolutely. Had some interesting conversations with some of my colleagues as well as some of my patients about that. And someone had asked for the Fitzgerald quote, which I do have, and I can see if I can get this into the chat for you guys. The test of a first-rate intelligence, the ability to hold two opposing ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Probably my all-time favorite author. Okay. And when it said feeling hopeful and hopeless at the same time, I hear that one often. Thank you guys for sharing some of these. These are fantastic. And so that's an interesting paradox too, right? Because there may be things that we are hopeful for, but sometimes it means letting go of things that may no longer be part of our reality in the present. So sometimes it's feeling hopeful as well as grief simultaneously. And someone had asked for a printed list of our 8 mantras, which I don't know if we're able to, if we have a way to distribute that. And Krista, you may be able to offer a suggestion on that. I will put it in the chat though, so that if you guys are able to see it that way. Okay. And said it was challenging to let go of my mistakes. Yeah, we're really good at keeping our, ourselves on the hook for the things that we have regretted or maybe would have done differently had we known what we know now. it's much easier sometimes to forgive others of their transgressions than it is for us to accept our own. And it's a very interesting double standard that I think often when we delve into it, we recognize a little bit more about how we may hold ourselves up to standards that are not necessarily always realistic or helpful. Or, the idea of exhibiting compassion towards yourself ends up being very uncomfortable, perhaps because it was never taught to you, or perhaps because you think that by making mistakes, it makes you less worthy of consideration or love. And so sometimes it helps to delve into why is it that I hold myself up to that standard? And Peter said it fell asleep almost completely. And, certainly sometimes it may suggest that our bodies are trying to tell us something about our own needs. So never be upset about that because sometimes, we need to listen to what our bodies are saying. And several people who said that they felt like this was a beneficial practice today. And we had someone say, really appreciated, can't change the past or predict the future. So to me, it means living in and appreciating the present. Absolutely. And someone said, thank you for reminding me it's okay not to be perfect. Yeah. It's interesting how those narratives get so established in our minds that, we have to do everything right. It has to go just so. If we don't, follow this particular standard, it's going to, I don't know, the bottom will fall out of everything. The earth will spin off its axis, I'll be rejected by society. So it's, but oftentimes when we actually lean into it a little bit, we recognize maybe that isn't quite the standard by which we expect ourselves or others to live by or need to. So it said, hope for the best, plan for the worst, expect nothing. If only our brains would get the message on that, right? And so we have to sometimes remind ourselves of some of these things. And Kieran had said, phenomenon of paradox is so complex. And I guess, part of, for me as a psychologist, I live in the gray. Everything I do is gray. It's not black or white. It's not, something is all or nothing. There's very, very little of that I end up seeing in the world. And so, someone may, be working with me in therapy and, there's so much that they're doing. They're trying so hard and they're a good person. And then they might tell me something that is weighing really heavy on their heart. And they are deathly afraid that that is going to automatically twist how I see them, that I'm going to automatically somehow see them as a bad person or not enough, or they're not, everything that's good about them is negated because of this one thing. And so I think, being able to talk about those things, in the context of therapy or with others, it can be really helpful to realize that that is not necessarily true. You can be a human being and have made mistakes and be working through and still be a good person. And so I think that often is something we need to hear from ourselves as well as others. I think we are just over time, so I want to make sure to be respectful of everyone's afternoons. And thank you so, so much for joining us today. And I'll let Krista close us out.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. It's a reminder that two truths can exist in the same sentence. It's something that I've been playing with in recent developments of life's progression. So I really appreciate the way that you share in this paradox that we call life, the spiritual being living a human experience. I appreciate your guidance, Dr. Rush. I saw one of our friends here said that they copied and pasted the 8 affirmations that Dr. Rush offered into a Word document, and sounds like they've already got it printed. What I can do is also offer them when we publish the recording to the YouTube in the comments section of the recording. And thank you all so much for your presence today. As always, I'm just completely grateful for the way that you continue to show up for our community around the globe, mindfully, compassionately, and so curiously and patiently with yourselves and others. So appreciate you all. If you have any questions about your journey through Parkinson's, don't hesitate to take a look at our website. You can call our helpline, and I'm only an email away. So we'll see you guys soon. If not next week, somewhere, this World Wide Web will continue to connect us. Until then, be well, be present.